Hey there, true believers. Welcome back to the Bear Your Shield podcast. I'm your host, Ron Scheffler, and we are taking it to the mat today. We're going to the gym. We're going to take a look at Jiu Jitsu and how you can bear your shield within that martial art. So joining me in the studio is my son-in-law, Ryan Farniok, longtime Jiu Jitsu competitor. And Ryan, welcome to the studio.
Hey, Ron. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, first off, the Jiu Jitsu, it's just a gym. It's not like a dojo, so that's something specific to Jiu Jitsu, right?
Correct. Usually they go by gym, sometimes dojo, but it's not as traditional as some of the other martial arts.
Yeah, okay, but, and we'll probably get into this, there is some etiquette that must be followed. We were talking a little bit earlier this morning about it, yeah. So tell me, I know some around the locker room, around the gym, there's usually some kind of nickname, name calling. Is there, I don't know. Do you have a nickname in the gym?
Nope. Just Ryan. Hey, guy. Whatever.
Is it because they're afraid of you, or is that that's not a thing?
Nope. We hardly give nicknames out unless you've really earned them, and we don't have too many of those floating around.
All right. So let's start off with, just tell us, what is Jiu Jitsu?
Jiu Jitsu is a martial art based mostly around grappling. If you mix a little bit of judo, a little bit of wrestling, with a little bit of Japanese martial arts for the submissions, you'd kind of arrive at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's a submission-based martial art, so we do go until there's a tap, a break, or unconscious opponent. But there's little to no striking unless you're learning the self-defense aspect of the sport.
So is that how it's different between other martial arts, like maybe judo, karate? I can't think of what the Israeli...
Krav Maga. Yep.
Yeah. Is it different than all that?
Yep. I started off in Muay Thai. I did 6 years of it's a stand-up striking that you use your elbows, knees, kicks, as well as there's a boxing component to that. But after taking enough head abuse from the shots that you eat in that sport, I decided on the grappling aspect because it's a little bit softer, easier on the body overall. You're not taking the head trauma. But where it differs is it is a grappling heavy sport. So judo is typically always on the feet. Points are scored off of takedowns. There is a submission element to it, but that's not kind of what they highlight. Wrestling kind of is definitely a grappling martial art, but they stop at a pin-based system. Within jiu-jitsu, there's points or the snap or break, and obviously the verbal or physical tap.
And the snap or break being the leg, arm, things like that.
Appendage of choice, yes.
You're just talking. You're just very nonchalant about when you say that. So I just want to make sure the listeners out there what you mean. So I kind of think here you just answered, why you picked jiu-jitsu over other martial arts, just head trauma and whatnot. But there's different rankings too within the sport. So talk to me a little bit about the belt covers, and if I remember it, you're purple.
Yes.
And so tell me, let's talk about the different levels first.
Sure. So it goes white, blue, purple, brown, and black. A white belt would be kind of your day 1 through maybe 2 years within the sport. You're learning the basics of how to fall, the basic positions of the grappling sport, like guard and playing off the back and stand up, and really learning the terminology of the sport. Blue belt would be your 2 to 4 years of experience belt. You've now, if we're thinking of it as like learning how to speak a language, you're now putting together sentence structure. You know most of the words, most of the spots, but now you're learning how they, connect to one another. Purple belt, there's a lot more freedom at that belt. Generally, you've been training for 4+ years. And you are speaking in paragraphs. You've learned how things chain together. You're dangerous from every spot. If you were to stop training here at purple belt level, you are pretty competent in just about any self-defense scenario against an untrained opponent. You're really going to start toying with people at that level. Brown and black belt, the separation there, aside from learning some of the more advanced techniques of the belts, it's really just time on mats, time in training, how many hours you've put in over the years to add to your experience.
You know, you mentioned the different color belts, but also we were talking once about, we came to see you in Wisconsin Dells at a tournament.
Sure.
And if I remember right, like you were kind of like early start blue or initial blue belt, I think maybe is what it was called.
Yep.
And you went against, what would you call it, like more experienced blues or?
Yeah, so there is a striping system in it, and it's kind of a nice little dopamine hit when you get a stripe and you get recognized for some of the time you put on in those years in between belts. And there, sometimes it's just when the coach decides you're ready. Some gyms go by based off of how proficient you are at certain things, but it just basically goes to show how close you are to that next belt. During that tournament, I had no stripes. It was kind of my first tournament at blue belt. Didn't go my way. But yeah, the two gentlemen that were also in the bracket were very close to getting their purple belt and really were trying to show their coaches with that last tournament that they were ready.
Yeah, and you've got another tournament coming up here in a few weeks, couple of weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
In Hudson, Wisconsin. You're on a poster. I thought that was pretty cool, going against somebody else, and I'm looking forward to hearing how things go with that. But I've seen you, besides that one tournament, we came and saw you in the gym, and I just remember it seemed to me like, first of all, I didn't know what was going on, but you were locked with this dude, and both of you guys were just sweating like mad, and I'm like, it's not showing like anything's going on, but the sweat's pouring out, so there is strain and stress and muscle action going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of friction, a lot of muscle, a lot of strain, a lot of technique. The gentleman that you're speaking about is my training partner, Brandon. He's a little bit lighter than me, but about my same skill level. So when we spar, we lock horns pretty good, and it's a battle of who moves the quickest and who reacts first, and it can get pretty deadlocked out there.
So tell me a little bit, like tell the audience, how did you get into jiu-jitsu in the first place? Like, did you watch it? Did you just go with a friend? Like, how did that start?
Yep, my interest peaked when early in my high school days, I got pretty heavily into the UFC and watching the different fights. And as I started to peak out on my own, and I joined the Muay Thai gym, which was the same place that I trained Jiu Jitsu at, and did that for a while, and got, it was 6 years, so I got to a pretty proficient where I felt good about my boxing, and I'm like, you know what? I work in law enforcement. At the time, I was working hospital security. In certain situations, boxing is not how you solve, somebody attacking you. So I got into the grappling aspect, and it was much safer on my body, and in my opinion, is the much better option for self-defense.
And of course, like you said, it's going to help you with your job, and football players who don't work out, military guys who don't work out, police officers, first responders, firefighters who do not work out, do not take care of themselves, really start to fade in their job aspect. So kudos to you for that. I guess I was gonna ask you, you got into the jiu-jitsu then, do you feel like jiu-jitsu in a way is a form of therapy for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. The type of workout it is, like strip away the self-defense and the competition and the social aspects of it. I mean, it is a workout unlike any other. We have guys that run ultra marathons and do the CrossFit competitively and come from all different sport backgrounds, and you jump into this and that kind of workout, especially where you're struggling with another human who's trying to impose their will upon you. You really learn valuable life lessons about dealing with struggle and dealing with pressure and dealing with, just kind of physical aspects that reflect into your personal life as well. So it helps you really de-stress, get a good workout, and learn those life lessons at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. When before we met, we were coming to Minnesota to meet you for the first time. You're now married to Gabrielle, but then started dating her, and I was kind of like, well, I'm 4.5 hours away. I'm in another state, and Gabrielle's already telling us that you're a little nervous to meet us for the first time. So it was like, oh well, that's okay. That should be okay, because any person should be a little bit nervous. It should be one natural, but also should be a little maybe respect to the parents and that. But I remember thinking, how President Trump will go and shake someone's hand and like holds it for like an awkwardly long moment.
Sure.
And then it's like everybody's like, it's painful to watch, right? So I had this idea in my head, like, okay, I don't know you from Adam. I'm going to go up and I'm just going to hold your hand for an awkwardly long moment. Not as long as President Trump, but I just wanted to like let you know I'm still dad.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm still dad. And so I remember shaking your hand, and then I was like, okay, 2-3 seconds, whatever it was, that was a little bit longer than the quick shake, and I'm like, okay, subliminally I feel like I got that point across to you. And I don't think we ever talked about this, right?
Nope.
But then, so then we leave, and then I find out that you're in Jiu Jitsu, that you train martial arts, and UFC fighting. I was like, well, that guy probably could have whacked me out in one hit, but here I am being like, well, I'm dad, So, anyways, I tried. So.
That's dad's job. But that's the fun thing about martial arts is I think sometimes they get a bad rap, the gyms and stuff, for being this tough guy culture. And I'm sure that there are those outliers out there. But for the most part, most of our clientele at the gym are working full time. They're parents. They're, come from all walks of life, all different ages and everything. And it's a really big place of community. It's good for people that might struggle to find that sense of belonging. Come to our gym. Everybody's so warm and welcoming. It's not this kind of jock-esque environment. It can be if that's what you're looking for. I mean, we definitely have subdivisions of people who take this, very seriously and they want to win. But 90% of the people that come into my gym are, just average Joes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I noticed that different walks of life, different sizes and shapes in your gym when we've been there a couple of times. Some guys super fit, other guys, a little bit bigger, and people built like yourself, tall and thin, athletic. So it's really interesting to me to see how people are. And of course, you've got an advantage being tall with that mechanical advantage, right? I mean, that's pretty cool from that standpoint, being in the sport. Tell me a little bit about like, when I look at you, when we talk, when Gabrielle was telling us about you initially, to me personally, and I could be off here, but the way I think, I see some of my attitudes, my beliefs, actions that I have in you as well, and I feel like that I can be pretty guarded.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you're guarded, like you have a personality, you have close-knit friends versus a lot of friends type of thing, or do you feel that you're guarded, and jiu-jitsu maybe supports that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm pretty, a little bit more of an introvert in that respect, of having a smaller circle, a little bit more guarded, partially probably because of upbringing, the other half, that law enforcement side to it. But that is the nice thing about the gym and the community, is it actually kind of brings that out of you a little bit, because of all the, like I said, all the different walks of life and experience levels, not only in jiu-jitsu, but life itself. It kind of helps me curb what could be seen as a bad habit and make it a good one.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, the fact that you keep bringing up community. For me, I know that I'm guarded, and I'm careful who my friends are. I've made some decisions where I don't want to run with certain people because of what they do. And, sometimes even just with certain friends, I find that I've lost friends because of my faith and wanting to follow Christ. Not in the fact that they don't believe in God, but I just feel like sometimes just people aren't following. So I get guarded like that. So I appreciate that you have that community there of support. I don't want to call the term brotherhood, but I think there's a strong brotherhood, right?
No, absolutely. When you ultimately the goal of jiu-jitsu, if you're looking at it from a self-defense aspect, which I would say most people that come into the gym, they're trying to learn that kind of how to defend themselves and stuff like that. When you're struggling with another person, like during our open rolls where it's live sparring, you're trying to win, and you're having somebody that's actively trying to choke you, break your bone, but in the same breadth you have this like respect with your training partners as such that you trust them literally with your life when you're out there. Hey, you have me in a fully locked up choke, you're gonna honor that tap or that verbal tap, and not put me unconscious and keep the choke and hurt me, and through that I think there's a level of I don't know if intimacy is the too strong of a word, but like a closeness, because I think in today's day and age, a lot of, men especially don't have that where you're kind of in close contact with another human, and being through a struggle where you're mutually combating each other. Yes, builds a brotherhood. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Similar to probably infantry and police officers who have partners and detectives and whatnot like that. I'm sure a lot of that is similar. For me, when how I got a little bit guarded, I was bullied as a kid in elementary school, all throughout middle school, and then I used to go home and I'd come home and I'd cry about it, and then I'd go down in the basement and I had the Survivor album, Eye of the Tiger, and so I cranked that up in the stereo. I start lifting weights on the bench, and that would last for about 3 days until I went back off to my comic books or whatever it was that I did, because they were picking on somebody else. But, I had this hardened heart during that time, that it continued to progress into my adulthood. And I feel that that's how I kind of became guarded. From a standpoint of your heart, when you hit the mat, do you feel like you have a hardened heart at all about maybe just life, or your life, your job pressure from being on the street with in the police officer role? Is there something just the way society is nowadays? Do you feel like you've got a hardened heart like that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Having I sympathize with that feeling 100%. I grew up kind of undersized, longer hair, glasses, braces, the whole thing. So went through bullying as well. And then when you get to different law enforcement jobs and security, and you see how some people are capable of treating not only you for the uniform you're wearing, but also their brothers and sisters, how they treat people. And it's very easy to become jaded and have a hardened heart. But the martial arts all around, no matter which art, obviously I'm biased towards jiu-jitsu, but no matter which one you do, I don't know, I think it starts to erode that hardened heart a little bit through that combat, through that reforging, that closeness, the people that you sweat and bleed on the mats with, definitely helps put everything in perspective through that struggle.
Yeah, having that hardened heart, I say it, I don't say it nonchalantly, that can bring up anger and other things in me. And it wasn't until, I really, really decided, Christ really brought me to my knees, and I just had to realize, let the scales fall off my eyes. I would have called myself a believer my whole life, but I feel like if I would have died earlier, that Christ would have said, I wish you were hot or cold, but you're neither, and I'm going to spit you out. I don't know you, and that does kind of give me pause and chills in my life now. Thank goodness that God has let me continue on and soften my heart and continue to try and follow Him. And with Christ healing that hardness, and it's just allowed me to through Him, I was able to forgive others and mostly kind of forgive myself. I think if I think back on some things, I'm my biggest critic. I think you're your biggest critic.
Absolutely. Yeah, nobody's harder on me than me. That's for sure. Sometimes that opponent that you have when you go into a gym and you're training is another person, and sometimes figuratively you're rolling out there with your sin or with your struggle, and kind of learning to properly compartmentalize that. And like you said, similar, just a little bit ago, the lock screen on my phone says, "Lord, save me from living a life that ends in I never knew you." Just a little prayer that I constantly need to remind myself of to, keep not being lukewarm. Like you said, hot or cold, I'm going to choose hot.
Yeah, I love that. We were watching this DVD series. I think it's like a 6-episode series. Kyle, I'm going to butcher his last name, Eidelman, I believe it is. He's a pastor in Kentucky, and he did this series and book called Not a Fan. And basically, he's like, I don't want to be in the stands and just be a fan of Jesus. I need to be in the arena, in the game,
Sure.
following Christ. And my wife Tracy and I were watching it and watched the first episode, and he talks about the very passage with Jesus, "I will spit you out, for I do not know you." And my oldest son Jake, he was sitting over on the couch like he wasn't interested in the show, and all of a sudden he was like, "Oh my gosh!" I could shocked him. And he realized, yeah, that's true. So the next thing we know, he's sitting next to us watching the series, and it's a very powerful series. If any of the listeners out there haven't seen that before, it's called Not a Fan. And I'll ruin one thing by saying the main character dies in the very first episode. So what the heck's going to happen, right? So it's kind of cool. Not only do we gain another son, I like saying that you become part of our family and we become a part of yours. But the reality is you do have your own family that you are starting. And you have a son, Ollie.
Sure do.
And he's 5 now.
Energizer Bunny.
Yeah, he's awesome. Does that, as a dad, does Jiu Jitsu come into play at all when you're being a dad?
Definitely. It's, just doing the sport helps me to not be so high strung when dealing with an energetic 5-year-old. But it definitely has made me want him to see me struggle. When he comes to the mats and he sees, Dad's not going to quit, Dad's out there, getting after it. I think, what we referenced earlier, the Sad Dads Club, when we were talking, you can still get out there. You can, you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for them. And especially when it comes to the self-defense aspect and being able to protect your family, and yourself, that's of huge importance to me.
Yeah, so protecting your family, protecting yourself. So I think that probably be this is a great time to ask you, the name of the podcast is Bear Your Shield. What does Bear Your Shield mean to you, Ryan?
Bear My Shield definitely comes into play with that self-defense aspect. I see, me and Gab have, trialed out a whole bunch of different churches, and I see a lot of men out there within the church community, and it's going to sound like I'm kind of taking a shot at them. Maybe I am, but, out of shape, don't take care of themselves, aren't showing up for their families, and are certainly incapable of, defending them if something horrible were to happen to them. And I pride myself in knowing that I could, if I had to, if there's a fire in our building, pick up both my wife and kid and get out of the building without issue, go back in if I need to. I think Christ asked us to take care of ourselves, and, he provided us with these gifts of family, kids, wives, and it's our duty to, protect them, to keep ourselves at our best for them. So that's where I take up the Bear Your Shield approach.
Yeah, I think that's great. We, as husbands, we are to, love our wives as Christ loved the church, and that means sacrificially, and sometimes that means taking care of ourselves, not having the double cheeseburger over the single one, which is ironic because we were talking about how great Culver's cheeseburgers were earlier today. But
They sure are.
I think that goes a long way. How about, you talked about protecting your family. How about yourself from a Bear Your Shield perspective? What does it mean for you to bear your own shield personally?
To keep showing up for myself constantly, whether that is in the physical realm or the spiritual realm, or as a partner to my wife, a dad to my kid, to my big one recently for the shield that I'm bearing is, being present, putting the phone down, not being a slave to the doom scrolling, especially when the 5-year-old is awake and wants to play, and doing those things that are required of me from a fatherly point of view.
Yeah, perfect answer, and not just because you're sitting in front of your father a lot, but no, that was a great answer. I think too, from a Bear Your Shield standpoint, we've watched, since you started dating our daughter, we've watched you grow spiritually. You're sitting across from me, and you have a hat on that I really like, and it just says "Christ is King." Unashamedly, you're wearing it now. Granted, you're in our home, but you wore it here. You wore it on your travels there. You'll be wearing it on the travels back. And also, I've noticed as you've grown in your faith, you've been exploring churches and growing spiritually. We've noticed that your gym attire, I'm not sure, your gi, your t-shirts, your warm-up shirts, your practice equipment has all changed.
Yes, sir.
Giving Christ the acknowledgement.
Yeah, try and walk onto those mats and say a little prayer, one for bodily protection. Obviously, I don't, whatever he wills is going to happen regardless, but I try and, do a little prayer of self-protection. And but then I add another one of let this workout, this struggle be a reflection of the body that you gave me, the capable body, giving that struggle over to him and letting him use that as a celebration of, kind of the life we're allowed to live, doing fun things like this. So definitely try and keep that at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, I think that's good, and that's going to go a long way. A lot of guys can. I remember there was a book titled "How to Ruin Your Life by 40," and it was all about how guys make so many mistakes early on in their younger years, and they weren't ready, they weren't mature enough, or ready enough to be a father, or ready to get married. They didn't understand all those capabilities or responsibilities. And I'll tell you one thing. I was grateful to be asked to marry you guys out there on Lake Superior. That was really cool to be the pastor of that day. And I was grateful that you were so serious about the marriage. And I remember looking back, and I can't remember the exact time about it, but it was right after the service. You guys were walking back towards the rocks or something to get ready for some pictures, and I just saw you kind of fist pump, not to your buddies that were up there with you, but kind of fist pump internally to you, like, yes. We did it. We're here. We made it. I made the right decision. This is me putting thoughts into your head.
Sure.
But,
I agree.
It seemed like that was what you were saying to me, because I feel I can read you pretty well.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So, and I was really grateful to see that as Gabrielle's dad, and of course as the pastor of that day too, to be like, okay, I knew, if there was any doubts, we would have talked about it beforehand. But
Absolutely.
I knew at that moment that it was like, yeah, this put the period at the end of the sentence. So Ryan, I'm really grateful that my daughter has a protector that can take someone out.
Oh,
so
thank you. Yep, got to get through me. Yep, that's for sure.
Well, Ryan, thanks for being in the studio today. Listeners, if you're in the Eden Prairie, Minnesota area and like to meet Ryan and talk to him and see how he brings his faith to the mat, you can check him out at Pro Fitness Training, again, in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And for any of you guys, you warriors and gals out there at Pro Fitness Training that are listening to the Bear Your Shield podcast, thanks for tuning in. Folks, check out your local gym and see how you too can learn about Jiu Jitsu to help. One of the ways to
protect your spouse, your family, and yourself, and protect your heart. Lord says, seek after him with all your heart, and you will find me, the Lord promises. Until next time, Godspeed, and bear your shield.